What would you do if a child suddenly disappeared without a trace, without any plausible explanation, and no one knew what really happened? Have you ever imagined the despair of a family, the anguish of friends and neighbors, trying to find answers while the mystery only deepened with each passing day? Stay with me until the end, because what you discover now may surprise you and perhaps even leave you uneasy. The case of the lost child is one of those mysteries that seems like something out of a horror novel, but actually happened in real life. A disappearance with no clear clues, no reliable witnesses, and details that defy all logic. It's impossible not to wonder, how can someone simply vanish in broad daylight, on a busy street, or in a house full of people, and never be found again? And more, what can investigators, police, and even missing persons experts really do when everything seems beyond comprehension? From the beginning, this case attracted attention not only for the disappearance itself, but for the strange and inexplicable signs that emerged throughout the investigation. Objects out of place, neighbors' reports of strange sounds on the night of the disappearance, even footprints that mysteriously appeared and disappeared. It's as if something beyond human understanding was involved, a mystery that transcends the limits of what we know as normal. Have you ever experienced this? Or do you know someone who has? Consider the frustration and sense of helplessness that surround a situation like this. But before we delve into the more intriguing details, it's important to understand who this child was. Her routine, her world, so intimate yet so vulnerable. Every detail of her life, every habit, every path she took could be a clue, a window into understanding what really happened. The investigation revealed everything from small inconsistencies to facts that should never have been ignored, but that somehow remained in the shadows. And that's precisely where the suspense begins to intensify. The mysteries that should have been solved have multiplied, leaving everyone perplexed. The disappearance gained not only public attention for its strangeness, but also for the way the community and the family themselves were affected. The anguish of not knowing whether the child was alive or dead, the endless wait for a sign, the pressure on investigators, and the constant feeling that something was being hidden. All of this creates a tension rarely found in other cases. And it is precisely this tension that drives us to continue investigating, questioning, and seeking answers to a disappearance that defies time and logic. As we explore this mystery, you'll realize that every detail counts. A word spoken at the wrong moment, a look no one noticed, a door left ajar no one remembers seeing. Every fragment of information could be the key to understanding what happened on that fateful night. Stay with me until the end, because the sequence of events we'll analyze reveals nuances as disturbing as they are fascinating. And each new clue raises even more questions than it answers. And that's precisely why this case continues to intrigue us. It's not just a disappearance, but a mystery that defies any rational explanation. With each discovery, a new layer of mystery emerges, and you'll soon realize that nothing is quite as it seems. What you'll see next isn't just about a missing child. It's about the impact, the fear, and the inexplicable that lurk behind every detail. But before we delve into the deeper clues and theories, let's take a look at the beginning of this story. The moment when everything changed and the lives of everyone involved would never be the same. Have you ever stopped to think how easy it is for someone to disappear before our eyes? Even in a quiet neighborhood full of neighbors and children playing in the streets? That's exactly what happened with the child in this case. A disappearance that shocked the entire community and left investigators perplexed from the start. Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover now about the context and setting of this mystery may surprise you and challenge any logic you hold about disappearances. The child in question was only 8 years old, an age when life should be marked by play, laughter, and a peaceful routine. She lived with her parents in a simple house in a neighborhood everyone considered safe. She was known for her infectious joy, her curious way of exploring every corner of the block, and her seemingly endless energy. On that particular day, everything seemed normal. The child went out to play in the yard, as she did every day, while the family went about their daily chores, never imagining that that afternoon would change their lives forever. The disappearance occurred at a critical time of day, late afternoon, when sunlight was beginning to blend with shadows, and the wind carried a subtle chill through the neighborhood. Small details that would have gone unnoticed by anyone became disturbing signs when, minutes later, the child was nowhere to be found. Neighbors reported hearing laughter that seemed to be coming from the backyard, but soon faded into absolute silence. A fallen bicycle, a ball that rolled into the middle of the street, and no explanation. Every detail of this scenario contributes to the mystery surrounding the case. Leaving the feeling that something inexplicable happened in a matter of seconds, experts and police were called in immediately, recognizing the gravity of such a sudden disappearance with no apparent clues. Investigators experienced in missing children's cases analyzed every movement, every account, every small detail that might indicate what happened. But even with expertise and dedication, the case soon proved more complex than anyone could have imagined. It is precisely this sense of helplessness in the face of the unknown that makes the mystery even more intriguing and distressing. Imagine the tension of an entire neighborhood watching every corner, every half-open door, every shadow that seemed to move strangely. The atmosphere in that neighborhood that day transformed into something almost surreal. Sounds that were once common, like the slamming of a door or the rustling of leaves, began to be perceived differently, charged with uncertainty and fear. And it is in this scenario that we begin to understand not only the disappearance, but the emotional impact it had on everyone around them. Can you imagine the desperation of parents searching for answers and neighbors trying to make sense of something that seemed impossible to explain? And as the investigation progressed, more questions than answers emerged. Each initial clue seemed to lead to dead ends. Each statement raised new doubts, and the child's silence seemed to echo even louder with each passing hour. It is in this context that the mystery begins to take shape. It's not just about a missing child, but about a series of circumstances, small coincidences, and seemingly trivial details that came together to create a puzzle that no one has been able to solve to this day. Stay with me, because in the next stage we'll delve deeper into the child's last moments, analyzing every detail that might bring us closer to the truth and perhaps uncover clues that have gone unnoticed until now. What you discover may be as surprising as it is disturbing, and only those who follow closely will be able to grasp the complexity of this disappearance that defies any logical explanation. What would you do if you saw a child smiling and playing in the yard, only to have them disappear minutes later, as if the ground had swallowed every trace of their existence? Have you ever been there? Or can you imagine the despair of a family faced with an unexplained disappearance? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover about this child's final moments will grip you in a way you've never felt before. That day, everything seemed routine. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the neighborhood streets while the child chased his ball, laughing with the light-heartedness of someone without a care in the world. The neighborhood was quiet. Some parents still chatted at the gates, children ran around, and everything seemed to be as expected. But in a matter of minutes, this routine would turn into a nightmare. Witnesses report small details that now sound strange and disturbing. A woman in the building across the street reported hearing laughter and hurried footsteps, followed by an unusual silence. The older brother said the child was trying to show off a new toy he'd received, but quickly wandered off to a more secluded part of the yard, and no one saw him again after that. What would you do if you were in their shoes? How do you cope with the anguish of not knowing if every noise you hear could be a sign of danger? The stunned father and mother ran to search the immediate surroundings, calling the child's name, knocking on doors, and asking neighbors, as the sun slowly disappeared below the horizon. The silence they encountered was terrifying. No answers, no shadows, moving suspiciously, just emptiness where life, laughter, and play had once existed. It is precisely this contrast between the ordinary and the inexplicable that heightens the sense of mystery, making one wonder what really happened in that crucial moment. Experts in child disappearances say the final minutes before a disappearance are often the most crucial to an investigation. Every gesture, every path taken, every seemingly trivial decision can be a clue to unraveling the mystery. But in this case, even with accounts from family and neighbors, every attempt to reconstruct the sequence of events seemed to run into inconsistencies and gaps that were impossible to explain. Who last saw the child? What was she really doing? Why didn't anyone notice any signs that something was wrong? The entire neighborhood seemed frozen in time, as if that moment had suspended everyday routine. The silent streets, the lengthening afternoon shadows, the distant sound of dogs barking, all these elements created a scene that, today, is remembered with a mix of nostalgia and fear. And it is precisely in this space, between the familiar and the inexplicable, that the disappearance becomes a true crime mystery. The kind that defies logic and remains unsolved for years. As we delve into the final moments before the disappearance, every detail begins to take on weight. The position of a toy, the door left ajar, a footstep that shouldn't have been heard. Everything seems to point to something that escaped everyone's notice, leaving only unanswered questions and a sense of unease that lingers to this day. What you'll discover next will draw us directly into the investigation, where clues, theories, and accounts begin to intertwine, revealing layers of the mystery no one could have imagined. What would you do if suddenly the person you love disappeared without a trace, leaving only unanswered questions and a mystery that seems to defy logic? Have you ever been there? Or can you imagine the feeling of helplessness that grips a family when faced with an unexplained disappearance? Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover about the investigation and the theories surrounding this case may surprise and leave you with chills. From the first moments after the disappearance, authorities acted swiftly, aware of the gravity of such a mysterious case. Experienced officers organized detailed searches, scouring streets, backyards, and surrounding areas, trying to find any clue that might indicate the child's whereabouts. Every minute was crucial. Every piece of evidence found had the potential to reveal a path. But strangely, nothing seemed to fit together. Accounts from neighbors and witnesses were gathered, and interviews were conducted. But these often led to contradictions that only deepened the enigma. The initial clues were minimal: a misplaced ball, a fallen bicycle, perhaps a trail that mysteriously disappeared. But at the same time, there were elements that seemed completely inexplicable, details no investigator could ignore. Some objects simply weren't where they should have been, and small pieces of evidence seemed to contradict even the most plausible theories. It's at this point that the mystery begins to intensify. Everything that should have shed some light on the case, in some way, only increased the doubts. As the investigation continued, several theories emerged about what might have happened that fateful afternoon. Some believed it was a common crime, something planned and committed by someone with dark intentions. But others, analyzing the strange events and inconsistent witness accounts, began to raise hypotheses that bordered on the supernatural. Some believed something inexplicable happened that night, something beyond human comprehension and defying any rational explanation. Stay with me, because every detail we explore reveals layers of this mystery that few have dared to investigate. Investigators attempted to reconstruct the child's movements, studying every second that passed before her disappearance. But the pieces of this puzzle refused to fit together. Each piece of evidence seemed to open up new questions rather than answers. It was at this point that the imaginations of experts and the curious began to take over, creating theories ranging from abduction by criminals to phenomena that for some could have an inexplicable or even supernatural origin. And that's precisely what keeps this case so simultaneously intriguing and terrifying. There's no single convincing explanation, and each theory put forward by investigators or those following the case raises even more questions. Some reports suggest the child was seen in places no one should be, or that strange sounds echoed through the neighborhood on the night of the disappearance. All of this fuels the feeling that something out of the ordinary happened, something that police records alone can't explain. As we delve deeper into this investigation, every detail becomes crucial. With every clue, every testimony, every contradiction, we realize that the disappearance is not just a common crime mystery, but an enigma that defies time, logic, and even human understanding. And that's precisely why you need to keep following, because in the next stages, we'll closely analyze these theories, explore every possibility, and try to understand why, to this day, no one has been able to solve what happened that night. Have you ever wondered how a child could simply disappear in front of so many people and no one noticed anything out of the ordinary? What you're about to discover may surprise you and make you question everything you thought you knew about unexplained disappearances. Stay with me until the end, because every detail we explore reveals clues that seem small at first glance, but hide a mystery much bigger than any investigation could ever imagine. From the first days after the disappearance, the evidence collected showed inconsistencies that left investigators and experts perplexed. Objects that should have been in their rightful place simply disappeared without explanation, and other signs seemed to completely contradict witness accounts. A bicycle fallen in the yard, toys out of place, doors left ajar or closed unexpectedly. Every detail reinforced the feeling that something beyond human comprehension was happening. How had no one noticed this before? Neighbors reported strange sounds on the night of the disappearance, footsteps that didn't belong to anyone they knew, whispers that faded into the wind, as if someone or something was watching every movement unseen. Each account seemed minor in isolation, but when pieced together, they created a web of mystery that no one could decipher. Stay with me, because each piece of evidence brings us closer to understanding the full extent of what happened. Even if some answers still seem elusive, some objects found bore enigmatic marks, unusual signs that seemed to carry a silent message, something no one could interpret. Small footprints appeared and disappeared without explanation. Windows opened when everyone swore they'd closed them, and unexplained noises captured by security cameras that no one could identify. All of this heightened tension in the neighborhood and created the feeling that the disappearance was not just a common crime, but something that defied any logical explanation. As investigators attempted to reconstruct the events, more questions emerged than answers. Each piece of evidence seemed to contradict the last, and every detail, no matter how small, became crucial to understanding what really happened. Who was behind this? Was someone or something really intentionally manipulating these clues, or were they just coincidences that aligned in a frightening way? How could something so mysterious go unnoticed by everyone around it, leaving only traces no one can interpret? And it's precisely this sense of impossibility that keeps the case alive in the minds of everyone who follows it. The disappearance of a child, combined with enigmatic evidence and strange accounts, turns each clue into a point of tension, a fragment of a puzzle that still hasn't come together. Every detail makes us reflect on what really happened that night and how something so terrifying could have occurred without clear witnesses, a clear suspect, and no apparent explanation. As we delve into this labyrinth of evidence and mysterious points, we begin to realize that the disappearance is not just a crime that challenges the police, but a puzzle that defies everyone's perception. Every object, every sign, every strange report becomes an essential piece of this mystery that remains unsolved. And what we'll analyze next will lead us to delve even deeper into the events, showing that what seemed simple can be much more disturbing than anyone could imagine. Have you ever stopped to think about what it would be like to live with the uncertainty of not knowing the whereabouts of someone you love, especially a child? Imagine the despair of a family suddenly faced with an unexplained disappearance, with no clues, no answers, just a void that grows larger every day. Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover now about the impact and consequences of this case will reveal not only the scale of the mystery, but also the depth of the pain it caused. When a child disappears, the impact isn't limited to the immediate family. The entire community feels the impact, whether through the fear that sets in or the feeling of helplessness in the face of something that defies any logical explanation. In the neighborhood where this happened, neighbors began to eye every shadow with suspicion. Every unexpected sound became a cause for alarm, and the once peaceful routine became a constant state of tension. It's hard to imagine, but every detail of the disappearance, a toy out of place, a gate left ajar, footsteps that seemed to come from nowhere, became a painful reminder that something terrible had happened. For the family, the experience was devastating. Every minute without news of their child increased their anguish, and every attempt to seek answers brought frustration and more questions. Imagine the despair of never knowing what happened to your child, of waking up every day with the hope that something new might emerge, and of facing the gazes of strangers who don't understand the depth of the pain. It is at this point that the emotional impact becomes almost palpable, and the connection with the audience strengthens, because we can all feel, even if indirectly, the fear and anguish a family faces in such an extreme situation. The investigation, in turn, also suffered profound consequences. Authorities and experts dedicated countless hours trying to find clues and reconstruct the events, but they often encountered obstacles and unexplained gaps. Each piece of evidence seemed to open up new questions, and the pressure on investigators increased as the disappearance became news, attracting media and community attention. The feeling of helplessness was shared by everyone involved, making the case not just a criminal mystery, but an emotional and social challenge that affected everyone involved. Beyond the immediate pain, the disappearance left lasting scars on the family and community. Relationships were tested, routines radically changed, and the shadow of mystery became a constant presence. Every birthday, every holiday, every night without news carried an intense emotional weight. And it is precisely this human dimension of the case that makes it even more disturbing. We are not talking about just a crime or a mystery, but about lives impacted, dreams interrupted, and a constant sense of loss that no one can fill. As we explore the impact and aftermath, you begin to realize that this disappearance goes far beyond a simple true crime mystery. It involves fear, suffering, hope, and frustration on levels that defy comprehension. Every detail of the life, altered by the child's absence, becomes an essential piece in understanding the true extent of what happened, and how this event forever changed the lives of everyone involved. And as we move forward, we'll delve even deeper into the elements that make this case so unbelievable, analyzing what the community, experts, and the family have learned or haven't learned since that fateful day. What follows will reveal layers of the mystery that remain shrouded in uncertainty and suspense, setting the stage for the next stages of this unforgettable story. What would you do if, even after years of searching, investigating, and analyzing, there was still no answer regarding the whereabouts of a missing child? Have you ever experienced this? Or can you imagine the feeling of helplessness, fear, and anguish that grips a family and an entire community when faced with an unexplained disappearance? Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover now about the missing child case will show that, Despite all the efforts, the mystery remains intact, defying any logical explanation and leaving a sense of unease that few events can evoke. From the beginning, this case attracted attention for its unusual nature and the circumstances surrounding the disappearance. A cheerful, lively child vanished without a trace, and every attempt to reconstruct the events seemed to raise more questions than answers. Detailed investigations were conducted. Experts analyzed every clue. Neighbors and family members provided accounts that, at first glance, might have pointed the way, but nothing ever confirmed what really happened. And it is precisely this contrast between human effort and inexplicable mystery that makes cases like this continue to fascinate and disturb those who follow the story. Missing objects, contradictory reports, strange sounds, and signs no one could interpret. Every element found or reported throughout the investigation heightened the suspense and the sense that something beyond human comprehension was involved. The police, missing persons experts, and the community itself were faced with a seemingly unsolvable enigma. How could a child simply vanish in broad daylight, in a neighborhood everyone considered safe, leaving behind only fragmented and inexplicable clues? The emotional impact of this disappearance is impossible to measure. Imagine the despair of never knowing what happened to your son, the endless wait for any news, the frustration of seeing detailed searches lead nowhere, and the feeling that every minute that passes only deepens the pain. The entire community was affected, becoming part of an atmosphere charged with tension, fear, and uncertainty. Every look, every sound, and every shadow became a reminder of the disappearance, keeping alive the mystery and suspense surrounding the case. Despite all the efforts, theories, and investigations, no one has been able to discover what really happened to the child. Some believe she was kidnapped, while others raise darker or even inexplicable possibilities that defy logic and human understanding. Each new clue seemed to raise more questions than answers, leaving the disappearance shrouded in uncertainty for years. And that's precisely what keeps the case alive in everyone's memory. The mystery remains unsolved, haunting those who try to understand what happened on that fateful night. As you ponder this enigma, it's impossible not to be captivated by its complexity and the unsettling lack of answers. To this day, no one knows what happened to the lost child. The mystery remains, raising questions, arousing fear and curiosity, and challenging the perception of everyone following the case. If you enjoy mysterious cases and want to uncover other unexplained disappearances, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share this video with mystery lovers, because stories like this deserve to be known and discussed, even when the truth seems impossible to reach. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what has touched you most so far, sharing your opinion, a personal experience, or simply how you feel about following such a mysterious case. Not only helps create a deeper connection between everyone who follows this channel, but also strengthens the community of people seeking to understand unexplained stories and disappearances that defy logic. Each comment allows us to exchange perspectives, reflect together on the details of the mystery, and even raise new questions that perhaps no one has considered yet. And if you've been following this story so far and feel the same curiosity, the same chills at realizing how everything remains unsolved, be sure to like the video. A simple like shows that the content resonated with you, helps this channel reach more people interested in mysterious cases, and reinforces the message that stories like this deserve to be known, discussed, and reflected upon. It's a silent but powerful way to actively participate and support the investigative and narrative work we do here. Furthermore, if you haven't subscribed yet, take this opportunity to become part of this community. When you subscribe, activate the bell and watch each new video. You're demonstrating your desire to continue exploring cases of unexplained disappearances, unsolved mysteries and stories that provoke reflection, fear, and curiosity. Your participation is what keeps this channel alive, allowing more people to access content that sparks questions, empathy, and fascination with the unknown. Each subscription is a way of saying, I want to continue investigating and learning alongside you. As you reflect on this, consider how this child's disappearance and the mysteries surrounding it affect not only the family, but all of us who seek to understand the unexplainable. Your interaction, your opinion, and your support make it possible for these stories to continue to be told and shared, keeping alive the suspense, the investigation, and the emotional connection that cases like this provoke. Stay with me, because there is still much to explore, and every detail we reveal below may completely change how you perceive what happened on that fateful night. What happened to that child who disappeared without a trace? To this day, no one knows. It's impossible not to feel a chill down your spine just thinking about the last minutes she was seen, the anguished looks on her parents' faces, the neighborhood sounds that, for a moment, seemed all too common, but now become part of a disturbing, almost surreal scene. When someone disappears under mysterious circumstances, it's not just the physical absence that impacts, it's the emptiness that settles into everyday life. The feeling that something invisible has changed everyone's lives, transforming streets, homes, and hearts into spaces of tension and constant questioning. And it is precisely this absence that creates a mystery that seems to defy all logic, an enigma that forces us to look more closely at details that would previously have gone unnoticed, revealing a hidden truth that few dare to confront. Imagine the scene, a quiet neighborhood, children playing, the sound of wind in the trees, laughter echoing through the street, and suddenly a silence that consumes everything. The child disappears for no apparent reason, with no direct witnesses and no clear signs of violence or kidnapping. With each passing minute, the sense of urgency grows. Every glance at an empty corner or yard seems to carry an omen no one can decipher. It is in this contrast between the familiar and the inexplicable that the mind is forced to confront possibilities that defy comprehension: coincidence, crime, chance, or something much deeper, almost as if reality has transformed before our eyes. The first hours after a disappearance are always decisive, and this case was no different. The police arrived quickly, neighbors began searching every corner, family members shouting and searching every door, every tree, every alley. But the more they searched, the more inconsistencies emerged. Contradictory reports, small pieces of evidence that didn't add up, strange sounds that some swore they heard but no one could identify. Even the simplest objects, a ball, a bicycle, a forgotten toy, took on another dimension, as if they were pieces of an impossible puzzle. Every detail seemed charged with meaning, but no one had the key to understanding what was really happening. The emotional impact of this type of disappearance goes far beyond what most can imagine. It's not just the physical loss of the child, but the transformation that occurs in the mindset of everyone around them. Parents, siblings, neighbors, even researchers all begin making decisions based on a new reality, one marked by absence, fear of the unknown, and the need for answers that never come. Routines are disrupted, perceptions of everyday life change, every decision becomes fraught with worry and tension, and every small detail takes on a significance it once lacked. It's a true emotional journey, where despair mixes with hope, and the mind tries to find logic in something that often seems inexplicable. As researchers try to follow clues, each new piece of information only reveals more questions. Small inconsistencies pile up, an object out of place that shouldn't have been moved, a strange sound recorded by chance, witness accounts that change over time. Everything contributes to the feeling that there's a hidden truth, something lurking in the shadows of what's visible, waiting to be discovered by those attentive to the smallest details. And at the same time, the mystery provokes reflection on how life can change in seconds, how seemingly simple decisions, paths taken or not taken, can alter the trajectory of everyone around them. leaving consequences that extend far beyond the moment of disappearance. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because, to understand the true dimension of this case, we must observe not only the facts, but also the behind-the-scenes, the feelings, and the impacts that extend throughout the community. Every worried look, every door opened in vain. Every attempt to reconstruct the night of the disappearance reveals not only clues, but emotions, transformations, and the weight of a truth that remains inaccessible. It's as if we were faced with an incomplete painting, where every fragment, every shadow, every seemingly insignificant detail may hold the key to understanding something much greater than we imagine. The investigation, the searches, the reports, and even the small signs captured by chance form a disturbing mosaic. It's impossible not to become involved in the story, empathize with the parents, question the possibilities, and reflect on one's own perception of what is real and what can escape human comprehension. Each piece of the mystery arouses curiosity and unease, while also bringing us closer to understanding that some events have layers that go far beyond what we can see at first glance. And it is at this point, between the unknown and the attempt to understand, that we perceive the true dimension of the mystery. This child's disappearance is not just a crime. It is a narrative of transformation, of decisions made or not made, of the impact that a single event can have on an entire community. Every moment, every detail, every shadow of the night in which this happened continues to reverberate, provoking reflections on our own perception of reality, on the truth that often remains hidden, and on the fragility of the certainties we hold in the face of the inexplicable. Comment below, "I'm on this journey too," and tell me what you feel as you follow this story. What detail caught your attention the most, or what you think could have been decisive in understanding what happened that night? The child was only 8 years old, an age when curiosity and imagination seem limitless. Her routine was simple but vibrant. She woke up early for school, helped her mother with small chores around the house, and spent her afternoons playing in the backyard with her favorite toys. She was a smiling, sweet girl with an energy that lit up any room, capable of transforming ordinary moments into small adventures. The family, close-knit and protective, lived in a modest but welcoming home in a quiet neighborhood where neighbors knew each other and everyone felt safe. Until that day, life seemed to follow its natural course, with the light-heartedness typical of childhood, with no indication that something so disturbing was about to happen. The disappearance occurred on an ordinary afternoon, just as the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows and a golden glow that made every detail seem more vivid. The wind blew lightly through the trees, bringing the distant sound of laughter and footsteps, and the entire neighborhood seemed immersed in a calm typical of that time of day. But within minutes, this routine was abruptly and inexplicably shattered. The girl was in the yard, running and playing as usual, when she simply vanished. No screams, no suspicious movements, just silence that filled the space, leaving a feeling of emptiness no one could explain. The first to realize something was wrong were the parents. The mother, who was preparing lunch, noticed her daughter was no longer where she should have been and ran into the yard, calling her name. The father immediately went out to check the neighborhood, while the distress began to spread like an invisible wave, touching every corner of the house and then reaching the neighboring streets. What could have happened in so few minutes? How could a child so close, in an environment everyone considered safe, simply disappear without a trace? These questions began to pile up in the minds of everyone who witnessed the first moments of panic. Missing persons experts and local authorities were quickly called in, aware that every minute was crucial. Experienced officers organized detailed searches of the neighborhood, combing streets, backyards, vacant lots, and nearby areas. Every clue was carefully analyzed, every account rigorously collected, and the investigation team began working at an intense pace, trying to reconstruct the child's last steps. But even with the presence of highly trained professionals, every detail seemed to lead to a dead end. A toy forgotten in a corner, a gate ajar, small footprints that disappeared without explanation. All these elements contributed to increasing the complexity of the mystery. Neighbors were also instrumental in gathering information. Some reported seeing the girl moments before her disappearance, running with a smile on her face, while others mentioned sounds they couldn't identify or strange movements among the trees and bushes. Each account seemed to add a layer of suspense, but at the same time reinforced the feeling that something extremely unusual was happening. The presence of authorities and experts lent an air of seriousness to the case. But even so, no theory seemed to fit perfectly, and the tension between what was seen and what was real increased everyone's unease. The neighborhood, once quiet and routine, became a space charged with expectation, fear and uncertainty. The houses, the streets, and even everyday objects began to be watched carefully, as if they concealed answers no one could grasp. The child's disappearance was not just an isolated event. It was a rupture in the perception of security, a shift in the mindset of everyone who lived there, and a demonstration of the profound impact a single incident can have on an entire community. Every detail of the scene, the sound of the wind, the distant roar of cars, the birdsong suddenly interrupted, began to be analyzed with unprecedented attention, because any clue, no matter how small, could be essential to understanding the sequence of events. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because to truly understand what happened, we need to look behind the scenes of the disappearance, the nuances of the environment, and the decisions that shaped every second of that day. Every element of the neighborhood, every object in the yard, every sound recorded by chance or later remembered by neighbors, forms a complex web that blends facts, perceptions, and emotions. And it is in this web that the true difficulty in understanding the mystery lies. The physical evidence, the accounts, and the interpretations of the family and community intertwine in a way that defies logic, revealing not only the disappearance itself, but the psychological and emotional impact it left on each person involved. The girl's routine, seemingly simple and predictable, now became a focal point of investigation. Because every action, every path taken, every decision made could hold vital clues to understanding the disappearance. By reconstructing the environment, experts attempted to imagine the child's perspective, her choices that day, her moments of distraction, her games. It was an effort to transform memory and accounts into concrete evidence. But the more closely each scene was examined, the more the complexity of a phenomenon that was not easily deciphered seemed to emerge. And, at the same time, we observe how the disappearance influences the mindset of everyone around. Parents, family members, neighbors, and investigators begin to analyze every detail of everyday life, question small decisions, and become suspicious of situations that would previously have been considered trivial. This psychological transformation is part of the mystery's journey, understanding that the absence of answers generates new layers of perception, that each choice and each reaction become elements of a larger narrative filled with emotional impact, uncertainty, and revelations that for now remain hidden. Attention to detail, analysis of the environment, and reconstruction of the child's routine reveal an essential truth. Disappearance is not just about the event itself, but about how it transforms everything around it. Every misplaced object, every unexpected sound, every shadow in the yard takes on a different meaning. And it is in this scenario of change and heightened perception that the first crucial questions arise. How could someone simply vanish without a trace? What was happening in the final minutes before their disappearance? And most importantly, what decisions could have decisively influenced these events, even without anyone noticing? Now, as you embark on this journey of discovery and reflection, it's impossible not to feel the enormity of the impact a disappearance like this has. It goes far beyond the police investigation It touches the mind, transforms perceptions, alters routines, and reveals the complexity of life at its most vulnerable and unpredictable. Every shadow, every object, and every memory becomes part of a narrative that blends facts, emotions, and mystery, making it clear that the truth about what happened still remains hidden, waiting to be carefully and attentively uncovered. Comment below. This makes sense to me, and share what most caught your attention in this scenario. The decisions, the details, or the transformation that the child's absence brought to everyone around. The girl was only 8 years old, that age when everything is intensely discovered, where every sound, every shadow, and every movement around her becomes an adventure. She lived a simple routine, but full of small rituals that made childhood seem magical. She woke up early for school, helped her mother with small tasks, and spent the afternoon running around the yard, playing with dolls, and imagining worlds that only existed in her creative mind. The family was close-knit and loving, and the neighborhood until then was peaceful. Neighbors greeted each other on the sidewalks, children played fearlessly in the streets, and a sense of security was part of daily life. But that day, something no one could have predicted would completely change this perception of normalcy and security. The disappearance occurred on a summer afternoon, just as the sun was beginning to sink below the horizon, casting a golden light that illuminated every corner of the neighborhood, transforming shadows into elongated figures that seemed to dance to the rhythm of the wind. The weather was mild, with a gentle breeze passing through the trees and bringing with it the distant sound of footsteps, laughter, and familiar voices. Everything seemed to be going about its usual routine, but within minutes, the tranquility was replaced by an unsettling silence, the kind that weighs heavily on the chest and makes the mind search for explanations for the inexplicable. The girl, who had been running and playing in the yard, simply vanished, leaving only a feeling of absence and a silent emptiness that no one could comprehend. The first to realize something was wrong were the parents themselves. The mother, busy in the kitchen, noticed that her daughter's usual noise had ceased. She called her name, ran into the backyard, and realized that nothing was there anymore. No sign of interrupted play, no toys out of place, just the empty space that seemed to echo an omen of despair. The father, noticing the same emptiness, ran out into the street, calling out to the neighbors, trying to find any trace that might indicate where the child had disappeared. Tension began to build rapidly, turning ordinary moments into a race against time. While the feeling of helplessness spread throughout the house and the neighborhood streets, the authorities' presence was immediate. Police and missing persons specialists followed the case from the very first minutes, understanding that every detail could be decisive. They organized thorough searches of the surrounding area, analyzed footage from nearby cameras, collected reports from neighbors, and investigated any clues that might indicate the girl's whereabouts. However, the complexity of the disappearance became evident with each step. Each piece of evidence seemed to contradict another. Each report raised new questions, and the feeling that something out of the ordinary was happening only grew. Seemingly ordinary objects, like a doll left in the yard or a door ajar, took on new meaning, transforming into elements of a mystery that defied logic. As the investigation continued, the entire community's perception shifted. The once tranquil neighborhood became a place of constant observation, of heightened attention to any detail that might indicate something unusual. The streets, once walked naturally, were now carefully analyzed. Every shadow, every sound, every movement aroused suspicion. It was a curious but understandable phenomenon. The disappearance of a child not only has a direct emotional impact on the family, but also transforms the mindset of everyone around them, altering the way they perceive safety, routine, and predictability. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because truly understanding the disappearance requires looking beyond the obvious and exploring the behind-the-scenes, the subtle details, and the decisions that became crucial that day. The girl's every step, every interaction with the environment, every sound perceived or ignored by those nearby became part of a complex mosaic. Attempting to reconstruct the scene involves not only concrete facts, but also perception, memory, and interpretation, revealing how the human mind searches for meaning in the face of the unknown. It is in this space between reality and interpretation that the most intriguing questions arise. What decisions the girl made that day could have been decisive? What elements of the environment, what nearly invisible details, might contain fragments of a hidden truth? An analysis of the location and circumstances of the disappearance reveals yet another layer of the case's emotional and psychological impact. For the parents, every minute of waiting became an intense experience of anxiety and despair, while every attempt to find clues reinforced their sense of helplessness. For the neighbors, their perception of safety was transformed, creating a mentality of constant vigilance, a silent alert that altered their routine and sense of normalcy. For the investigators, every detail became crucial, and the responsibility of correctly interpreting small pieces of evidence revealed the complexity of the investigation and the need to consider even elements that seemed irrelevant at first. Glanced at disappearance also impacts how we think about time and decisions. Small moments, a lost second, a choice of path, a moment of distraction can become defining moments, changing the course of a story that seemed predictable. It's a reflection on the fragility of life, on how sudden events can alter entire trajectories, and on the emotional impact that extends far beyond the event itself. Every detail of the scene, every sound, every shadow in the yard or on the nearby street becomes a piece of a larger narrative, charged with mystery, transformation, and meaning. As we delve deeper, it becomes clear that understanding the disappearance is not linear. It involves perception, analysis, empathy, and a constant attempt to connect disparate fragments. The neighborhood, the house, the yard, the girl's routine, the sounds and movements of the surroundings, all are elements of a complex web that reveals not only what happened, but how absence alters the perception and lives of everyone involved. The search for answers becomes a journey, an ongoing exploration of the human mind, emotions, decisions, and the impact of events that defy logic and leave a lasting mark. Now that we begin to understand the context, routine, environment, and impact of this disappearance, every detail becomes even more relevant. Every decision carries weight, and the feeling that something important remains hidden grows. The girl's story is not just a tale of absence. It is a narrative of transformation, of how a moment can redefine lives, of the truth hidden between the lines and behind the scenes of a mystery that has yet to be solved. Right, I'm on this journey too, and share what intrigued you most about the setting, the girl's routine, or the details of the neighborhood that now seem so full of meaning. The sun was already beginning to dip below the horizon when the peaceful afternoon was interrupted by an unsettling silence. The little girl was in the backyard, surrounded by her dolls and small toys, which she scattered on the ground with the natural ease of someone without a care in the world. The wind rustled the leaves in the trees, producing an almost musical sound, and the distant sounds of cars and laughter seemed to blend with the calm of the neighborhood, creating an atmosphere that at that moment no one could have imagined would become the stage for a disturbing mystery. She ran back and forth, laughing and inventing stories with her fertile imagination, while her mother watched from the window, preparing snacks, distracted by small household chores. It seemed like just another ordinary afternoon, a predictable sequence in the routine of a lively child. But every detail of those last moments now carried a different weight, as if each gesture could have been a clue that no one noticed at the time. Neighbors later reported that around 4 in the afternoon, they noticed the girl playing happily alone, but always with a contagious energy that seemed to light up the yard. Some mentioned hearing laughter mixed with strange sounds, footsteps that seemed out of place, and even a faint metallic noise coming from a nearby corner that no one could identify. Each memory from these neighbors offered a different perspective, adding layers to the narrative of the disappearance, as if each fragment of memory were trying to reveal something that still remained hidden. And it is precisely this complexity that transforms the story into something more than a simple account of absence. It becomes a journey of perceptions, sensations and questions about what really happened at that moment. The mother, who had been watching her daughter's final movements, described the girl as focused on her games, seemingly carefree, but there was something almost imperceptible in her behavior. A lingering glance at a specific spot in the yard, a hesitant gesture before running to the front door as if something had captured her attention. The mother's vision was marked by a mixture of routine and subtlety, small details that at the time seemed insignificant, but which would later be carefully analyzed by experts and investigators. The memory of these moments reveals not only the child's routine, but also the fragility of how human perception can be limited in the face of the unknown. The disappearance happened so quickly that no one could pinpoint exactly when she left. The accounts converge on one crucial point. Within minutes, the bustling backyard became silent and empty. Realizing something was wrong, the father ran through the neighboring streets, calling his daughter's name, while the mother tried to imagine scenarios, mentally reconstructing every gesture, every laugh and every look, trying to find some clue that could explain her sudden absence. This moment, where routine abruptly shatters, is the heart of the mystery. What was the child doing at that moment? Who last saw her? And above all, how could someone disappear so quickly in a place considered safe? Disappearance experts followed every report from the beginning, every piece of evidence that emerged, knowing that reconstructing the girl's last minutes of life would be essential to understanding the case. Every misplaced object, every toy still scattered around the yard, every sound heard by neighbors or family members was analyzed with meticulous attention. The intention was not only to identify a possible line of investigation, but to understand the dynamics of that environment, how the girl interacted with the space and how small, seemingly irrelevant details could be crucial to deciphering the mystery. The neighborhood, once perceived as safe and predictable, became a scene of silent tension. Every tree, every open door, every shadow came under scrutiny as everyone's minds, parents, neighbors, and investigators alike tried to connect the dots that, at first glance, seemed disconnected. It was as if time had slowed down, making every second of the child's last moments analyzed and reanalyzed, searching for patterns, trying to understand signs that might have gone unnoticed. The perception of the environment, the sounds, the gestures, the sunlight touching ordinary objects, everything now seemed charged with meaning. Every detail a piece of a hidden truth that no one could fully grasp. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding the last minutes before the disappearance requires delving into the depths of human perception, the fragility of split-second decisions, and the impact each gesture can have on the sequence of events. It's fascinating to see how such a simple routine, playing in the backyard, seemingly trivial movements, can become the epicenter of a mystery that changes lives, transforms perceptions, and defies logic. The girl's energy, her attention to small details, the sounds echoing around her, and her interaction with the environment construct a complex, nuanced narrative where every choice, every step, every glance could have had unexpected consequences. The reconstruction of these final moments reveals a psychological and emotional dimension to the disappearance that goes far beyond what is visible. Parents, neighbors, and experts attempt to interpret every fragment of memory, every recorded sensation, seeking to understand not only what happened, but also how the presence and absence of a child transforms the perception of an entire space. The impact of this event extends not only to the investigation, but also to the way everyone around her perceives safety, routine, and predictability. Every detail, every gesture, every seemingly insignificant object becomes part of a web of meanings, revealing that the mystery is not just about the girl's physical absence, but about the transformation this disappearance provokes in the mindset of everyone involved. As we delve deeper into this narrative, we realize that the story of the child's final moments is also a reflection on the vulnerability of life, the unpredictability of decisions, and how the environment and circumstances influence every gesture. Every shadow in the yard, every noise in the neighborhood, every movement of leaves in the wind, all of them take on a new dimension, revealing that the hidden truth often hides in the subtlest details, and that complete understanding depends on careful observation, empathy, and patience. The experience of trying to decipher these moments is a true journey of perception, transformation, and revelation, demonstrating that, even when faced with the unknown, the human mind seeks meaning, patterns, and connections that help us understand the incomprehensible. Comment below. This makes sense to me, and share which detail of the girl's last moments intrigued you the most or gave you that feeling that something fundamental is still hidden. The girl's disappearance prompted an immediate mobilization of authorities, experts, and community members, all committed to understanding what could have happened in that backyard that until recently had seemed so safe. Experienced police officers organized a meticulous search, scouring every street, every vacant lot, and every corner of the neighborhood. Disappearance experts analyzed the scene with surgical attention, noting the position of objects, marks on the ground, small footprints that seemed to lead nowhere, and every detail that might reveal the girl's path or some sort of incident that might explain her absence. Interviews were conducted with neighbors, family members, and witnesses, each account meticulously recorded, compared with the physical evidence found. It was a complex, nuanced investigation, where every detail had the potential to change the direction of the conclusions. And at the same time, no clue seemed to lead to a definitive answer. As the search intensified, theories began to emerge, attempting to make sense of the unexplained. One of the most discussed hypotheses involved the possibility of a common crime, kidnapping by someone with malicious intent, a stealthy and swift approach that would explain the girl's sudden absence. Investigations into individuals with criminal records in the region were conducted, interrogations conducted, and suspicious movements analyzed, but, curiously, no direct connection was found. This line of investigation, while plausible, seemed to be hampered by a lack of concrete evidence, heightening the suspense and the feeling that something deeper lay behind the disappearance. On the other hand, some theories explored more complex, almost supernatural aspects of the case. Neighbors' reports of strange sounds, shadows that seemed to move without apparent cause, and phenomena that defied logic began to be considered as possible clues to a reality that didn't fit conventional explanations. Some believed that something inexplicable happened that night, that unknown forces, impossible coincidences, or even phenomena that defy human comprehension could have played a decisive role. This type of speculation, while unlikely at first glance, increased the case's fascination and challenged the mindset of everyone involved in the investigation, reminding them that not everything can be easily categorized or explained. While these hypotheses circulated, the search for concrete clues continued relentlessly. Investigators scoured nearby woods, abandoned lots, and even buildings under construction, trying to find any clue that could guide the investigation. Every out-of-place object, every unusual detail in the yard or on the street began to be analyzed with almost obsessive attention. The psychological impact of this search extended not only to the professionals involved, but also to the family and the community, who watched every step of the investigation with anticipation and hope, aware that the smallest revelation could completely transform their understanding of the case. At the same time, The girl's disappearance began to create an emotional ripple effect. The mother and father, absorbed in analyzing every detail and waiting for answers, began to mentally revisit moments that had previously been simple and mundane. Every decision made in the backyard, every game, every moment of distraction began to be questioned, as if the logic of everyday life could somehow play a role in the sudden transformation of that routine into an inexplicable mystery. The entire neighborhood began to observe differently, analyzing shadows, sounds, and movements with unprecedented attention. And the collective mindset shifted, revealing the profound impact that unexpected events can have on an entire community. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding the investigation and the theories involves exploring not just the facts, but how each interpretation, each decision, and each detail of the scenario contributes to the enigma. The behind the scenes of this search shows how human perception, logical reasoning, and intuition intertwine in situations of uncertainty, creating a complex web of possibilities. Each theory, each suspicion, each clue analysis becomes a lens through which we attempt to see the hidden truth, the one that remains protected between what is visible and what is impossible to explain without delving into the minds, decisions, and perceptions of everyone involved. The impact of this phase of the investigation also reveals how collective and individual mindsets are transformed by extraordinary events. The search for answers is not just a matter of finding evidence, but also of understanding the complexity of human emotions, the effect of mystery on environmental perception, and how split-second decisions can trigger lasting consequences. Every step the investigators take, every account revisited, every detail of the backyard and nearby streets becomes part of a larger narrative, filled with psychological transformations, unexpected revelations, and a hidden truth that still defies complete understanding. What makes this disappearance even more enigmatic is the intersection between concrete facts and possible explanations that seem to defy reality. On the one hand, there's the meticulous investigation, evidence collection, interrogations, and forensic analysis. On the other, there are subjective perceptions, neighbors' accounts, strange sounds, inexplicable movements, and the feeling that something outside of everyday logic may have interfered with the course of history. This duality creates a rich scenario for reflection, questioning, and analysis, where every detail, every observation, every decision made becomes a piece of a puzzle that has yet to be solved. Now that we've explored the searches, the interrogations, the clues found, and the most plausible theories, from the most rational to those that defy logic, we can see how the case became a profoundly impactful journey. It's a narrative that blends investigation, mindset transformation, revelations, and decisions, showing that understanding such a complex disappearance requires more than just observing evidence. It requires empathy, attention, thorough analysis, and the ability to grapple with the hidden truth that insists on remaining hidden. Comment below, "I'm on this journey too," and share which theory, detail, or interpretation caught your attention or intrigued you most about the mystery surrounding the girl's disappearance. What makes this case even more intriguing is not only the visible events, but also the evidence that emerged in the following days and weeks. Small clues that seemed to point the way forward while simultaneously generating even more mystery. Every detail analyzed by the researchers carried a fascinating duality. On the one hand, it was concrete, palpable, like a doll that disappeared for no apparent reason or a toy left out of place. On the other, it seemed to defy any logical explanation, raising more questions than answers. How did no one notice this before? How did small signs go unnoticed at a time when everything still seemed normal? Attention to the smallest details became a crucial tool in trying to understand the hidden truth surrounding the girl's disappearance. revealing that often what we ignore in everyday life can become decisive when confronted with the inexplicable. Inconsistencies began to accumulate, almost subtly but persistently. Neighbors recalled strange sounds coming from the backyard, footsteps that seemed erratic, incomprehensible murmurs that no one could pinpoint. Objects the child used daily were simply no longer where they should have been, as if displaced by an unseen presence. Experts pointed out that small, seemingly insignificant changes in the environment could be interpreted as signs of an event far more complex than any casual observer could imagine. Every oversight, every misplaced detail, became part of a larger narrative, one that blended investigation, observation, and a degree of intuition. Attempting to decipher the logic behind the inexplicable, photos of the yard, analyzed hours after the disappearance, showed shadows that didn't correspond to the sun's position or the surrounding objects. Some reports mentioned fingerprints that didn't belong to anyone known, barely perceptible marks on doors and windows that indicated something had moved for no apparent reason. Every piece of evidence was carefully recorded, photographed, and analyzed. And yet the prevailing feeling among investigators was that the full truth remained hidden, somewhere between what could be proven and what could only be felt. The psychological impact of these discoveries affected everyone involved, family members, neighbors, and experts, creating an atmosphere of silent tension, where each new detail reshaped mindsets and fueled the mystery. Beyond the physical evidence, strange reports emerged that became focal points during the investigation. People passing through the neighborhood in the following days mentioned the sensation of being watched, of hearing light footsteps that suddenly disappeared, of noticing movement in places where no one was. These reports, which could easily be dismissed as figments of imagination or fear, were carefully analyzed as subjective experiences, when repeated consistently, can offer valuable insights into patterns not immediately apparent. It is at this point that the investigation takes a deeper turn. It begins to explore not only what happened objectively, but also the psychological and perceptual impact the disappearance had on the community and those involved. Small, enigmatic signs became part of the narrative of the disappearance. A displaced trail of sand, a half-open door that hadn't been touched, a doll positioned differently. Every detail seemed charged with meaning, as if trying to communicate something no one could fully decipher. The complexity of these clues demands an open mind, capable of interpreting nuances and patterns that escape conventional logic. Each object, each movement, each potentially irrelevant shadow becomes a piece of a puzzle that cannot be assembled with concrete facts alone. It requires taking into account perceptions, sensations, decisions, and the human capacity to interpret the invisible. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how these pieces of evidence and mysterious points reveal not only the complexity of the disappearance, but also the transformation it causes in the way we perceive extraordinary events. The way each detail alters perception, changes decisions, influences emotions, and builds theories shows that we are faced with a journey of observation, reasoning, and intuition, where the impact is not limited to solving the case, but extends to understanding the fragility and depth of the human experience in the face of the unknown. By examining each missing object, each strange account, and each enigmatic sign, we realize that the mystery unfolds in multiple layers, demanding attention to nuances that would normally go unnoticed. What's most striking is how, even with all the investigation, analysis, and revision of every detail, the full truth remains inaccessible, hidden between concrete facts and subjective interpretations. Every observed unconsciousness, every displaced object, every irregularly perceived sound reminds us that reality can be much more complex than it appears, and that the journey to understand the girl's disappearance is not just a search for answers, but a transformation in the way we observe, interpret, and connect with the world around us. This process reveals the importance of open-mindedness, critical perception, and sensitivity to the nuances that may contain hidden truths. Comment below. This makes sense to me, and write which detail or mysterious piece of evidence most piqued your curiosity or left you with the feeling that there is much more behind it than meets the eye. The girl's disappearance wasn't just an isolated case to be solved, but an event that profoundly transformed the lives of everyone around her. Imagine for a moment the despair of never knowing what happened to your son, of looking at the backyard where he had been playing minutes before and realizing that that safe, familiar space had become the epicenter of a mystery that seemed to defy all logic. The family entered a state of constant alert. Every sound, every shadow, every movement in the neighborhood immediately interpreted as a possible clue, an attempt to respond to the void left by the disappearance. Routines changed completely. Parents who had previously dealt with small, everyday concerns now experienced emotional turmoil, trying to organize searches, record statements, maintain hope, and, at the same time, deal with the silent pain of not knowing whether their son was safe or in danger. The impact on the community was also profound. Neighbors, friends, schoolmates, and even people from neighboring neighborhoods began to observe the area with unprecedented attention. Previously trivial conversations about daily tasks, leisure activities, or local news quickly turned into discussions about the disappearance, theories, evidence, and suspicions. Every strange report or unusual behavior became relevant, and the previously prevailing sense of normalcy gave way to a collective tension, a near-constant vigilance that altered everyone's mindset. It was as if the very atmosphere of the neighborhood had changed, carrying with it a mix of fear, curiosity, and an almost instinctive desire to find answers. Within the investigation, the impact was also decisive. The emotional involvement of the family and community created additional pressures on investigators, who had to deal not only with the physical evidence, but also with the complexity of an emotionally charged context. Every decision made, every step in analyzing clues or conducting interviews needed to be carefully balanced, taking into account the sensitivities of the people involved and the impact that the findings could have. Behavioral experts, psychologists, and forensic consultants were called in to help interpret the reactions of the family and community, offering insights into how human perception and emotion can influence both the collection and interpretation of evidence. The tragedy of her disappearance revealed, starkly and directly, how unexpected events can alter the trajectory of an entire life. The girl who disappeared left an indelible mark on the daily lives of everyone who knew her. Friends who previously saw her only as a playmate began to reflect on the fragility of childhood and the importance of seemingly small decisions and actions that can have enormous consequences. Every memorization of daily rituals, every photo, every story told about simple moments took on a much greater symbolic weight, as if their very perception of reality were being transformed by her inexplicable absence. The psychological impact extended to the investigators as well. Police officers and experts who worked tirelessly to find clues and possible solutions began to recognize the emotional dimension of the case, understanding that the impact of each discovery went far beyond the formal record or technical resolution. It stirred personal stories, transformed perceptions about safety, trust, and even how human decisions shape the fate of entire lives. Each twist, each contradiction found between reports or physical evidence generated not only new clues, but also a sense of urgency and emotional responsibility that permeated every step of the investigative work. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how the girl's disappearance served as a catalyst for transformation for everyone involved. It's not just about understanding the event itself, but about realizing how reality can reorganize itself in the face of situations of extreme impact. The community began to see everyday life with a sharper perception, alert to previously unnoticed signs, and the family itself experienced an intense emotional and mental journey, questioning past decisions, re-evaluating priorities, and trying to find meaning amidst the chaos. The social dimension of this mystery revealed that each disappearance has side effects that go far beyond the obvious, directly affecting the emotional and behavioral makeup of each person affected. Furthermore, the situation brought to light behind-the-scenes details and revelations that wouldn't normally be seen in a typical case. Details that would previously have been considered irrelevant, such as the position of a toy, the order of objects in the room, or the repetition of small daily habits, began to be interpreted in a completely new light, as possible indicators of patterns or signs that could be related to the disappearance. Every decision made by those involved, from small everyday choices to complex investigative strategies, contributed to building a narrative of suspense and reflection on how reality can be simultaneously concrete and mysterious. The emotional, social, and investigative impact of the case reveals that, even in the face of objective evidence and rigorous analysis, the human dimension can never be ignored. The way each individual deals with absence, fear, and uncertainty transforms the investigation into something much broader, a journey of perception, intuition, reflection, and learning about the fragility and complexity of life. This process shows that no matter how much rational answers are sought, there is always a layer of hidden truth, of subjective experiences, that influences the perception of facts and the interpretation of every seemingly insignificant detail. Comment below, "I'm on this journey too," and write which feeling or impact the disappearance has had on you the most so far. The one that made you reflect on how unexpected events can change lives and mindsets. To this day, no one knows what happened to the lost child. The mystery remains as vivid as when the disappearance was first reported, and each detail that has emerged over time only reinforces the feeling that we are dealing with something that defies common understanding. The meticulous and persistent investigations have attempted to track every movement, every decision and every clue, but the full truth always seems to elude us, as if hidden in the shadows of everyday life, waiting to be revealed by someone with the right perception, the open mind, and the sensitivity to interpret subtle signs that go unnoticed by most. The girl's disappearance has become a point of reflection on how lives can change in seconds, and how seemingly simple events can trigger a series of profound consequences, both emotional and social. The family, enveloped in grief and uncertainty, continues to deal with an unfillable void, while the community regroups, trying to understand how something so dramatic could happen right in the heart of a neighborhood that was once considered safe and peaceful. Each account from neighbors, each memory from family members, and each analysis from experts helps to build a mosaic of evidence that, paradoxically, heightens the sense of mystery rather than solving it. Some people believe something inexplicable happened that night. Some see patterns in coincidences, signs in small changes in routine, objects out of place, and shadows that seem to move independently. Each of these details creates a scenario of psychological suspense that goes beyond the police investigation, but permeates the daily experience of everyone involved with the story. The way the disappearance altered the collective perception of safety, trust, and control shows that there is a hidden truth that cannot be easily captured, but that slowly reveals itself through observation, analysis, and deep reflection on the impact of the event on each individual's life. The impact on investigators also deserves attention. Professionals who previously dealt with routine cases found themselves facing a scenario fraught with emotional and social complexity, where every decision made could directly influence the perception of the family, the community, and even the general public. Each step in the investigation required not only technique and experience, but also sensitivity to understand how small discoveries could affect the mindset of everyone involved. This care revealed the behind-the-scenes nature of a work that goes far beyond simple evidence collection. It involves the ability to interpret human behavior, understand decisions, and perceive nuances that may point to truths not immediately apparent. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how the mystery of the lost child forces us to reflect on broader issues, on perception, on the fragility of routine, on decisions that may seem trivial but can have unexpected impacts. The disappearance creates a space of tension between the known and the unknown, between what we can prove and what we can only feel or intuit. Every shadow in the yard, every displaced object, every strange account becomes a point of connection between objective facts and subjective experiences, constructing a narrative that challenges the mind and provokes reflection on how we deal with the inexplicable. The most intriguing thing is realizing that, even with all the available technology, detailed analyses and thorough interviews, the disappearance retains an aspect of hidden truth that escapes any simplistic logic. Each day that passes without answers reinforces the enigmatic nature of the case and transforms the experience into a continuous journey of interpretation, perception, and critical analysis, stimulating curiosity and empathy at the same time. The way the human mind searches for explanations, creates theories, and attempts to fill gaps in information is as fascinating as it is disturbing, because it reminds us that sometimes the mystery is greater than any attempt at rational understanding. This situation also highlights how a single event can alter the emotional, mental, and social trajectory of everyone involved, demonstrating the importance of paying attention to details, cultivating sensitivity to subtle cues, and understanding that life often presents us with experiences that require patience, observation, and openness to unexpected perspectives. Each fragment of information, each seemingly insignificant anecdote, each perceived shadow becomes part of a larger puzzle that no one has yet managed to fully piece together. And it is at this point that the mystery remains alive, provoking fascination and unease at the same time. Therefore, when revisiting each aspect of this case, considering every detail and every emotion involved, it is impossible not to feel the profound impact that an unexplained disappearance can generate. It is not just about seeking answers, but about understanding how life, decisions, and human perception are transformed by events beyond our control, challenging our certainties and inviting us to look at the world with a more attentive, reflective, and sensitive mindset. The child's disappearance thus remains not only an investigative enigma, but also a catalyst for reflection on the complexity of the human experience facing the unknown, on the impact of decisions, on how we perceive signals, and on the emotional journey that accompanies all those involved with the story. Comment below. This makes sense to me, and write what, for you, remains the biggest mystery or the most intriguing hidden truth of this case. And if you've made it this far, it shows that this story truly resonated with you, just as it resonated with me by revealing every detail. That's why I invite you to subscribe to the channel, so you can continue following these cases that defy logic and reveal aspects of life and the human mind that often go unnoticed. If you'd like to leave a comment, write, "I'm with you until the end," or any phrase that shows you felt the same intensity I did when telling this story. This helps create a real connection between everyone who follows the channel and shows that we're all together on this journey of curiosity, reflection, and mystery. Oh, and if you felt captivated by every detail, every suspense, please leave a like on the video. It's a natural way to show that the content made sense, that it provoked questions and emotions, and it strengthens the continuity of this type of narrative that brings us so much closer to the truth behind the mysteries. And there's more. There's a video here that complements this topic, featuring other equally intriguing cases with mysteries that remain unsolved. Click and stay with me there, because the journey is just beginning, and with each story, we delve even deeper into this universe of discoveries, revelations, and mysteries that defy comprehension.